Well, we've got some huge news and big updates that have dropped for Dune Awakening, from pre-orders and game editions to post-launch content, including audio work and never before seen gameplay insight. This video, we're going to break down everything that we've learned from Funcom's live stream, but a lot of other details are revealed by the bodacious Natasha, the senior PR manager. And the main takeaway from this first bit is where she starts talking to Jeff, who's the world director, also Avind, which is the expert environmental artist, basically the one that manages or designs the environments, the biomes and everything. So two top tier people we get introduced. And while Natasha's talking to them, we get a ton of gameplay. So we're just going to go through and highlight some of the very interesting things that they've mentioned, as they do cover a ton of stuff. The gameplay footage starts in Hagga Basin, and the first immediate interesting thing that we hear is when they come up to the trade post. We find out that there are 4 other trade posts, so it seems like 5 in total. Jumping to the trade post, we get a really good insight into how contracts will work. We've covered this in a bit of detail before. However, this reveals a lot more information. Straight away, they reveal that there are faction-related contracts indicated by the Harkonen symbol and the Atreides symbol. Non-faction-related quests, for example, they open one for Asmara, where we have to recover stolen pharmaceutical agents from the testing station east of Griffin's Reach trade post, which is the trade post we're in Hagga Basin. And what's interesting about this particular quest is that you get 700 XP, which sounds like a lot, 3,000 Solari, and you get the Sand Trout light armor set variant. And all we need to do is enter the Imperial testing station number 2, find the vials, deliver the vials. We also can see the Harkonen, where we'll get house standing for completing that mission, as well as XP and some Solari. This seems relatively simple. All we need to do is make it to another trade post in Vermelis Gap, which we know is the territory north of this trade post, as they travel to that region. Very soon after this, all we have to do is talk to an NPC. So that kind of confirms that there's a trade post in the next region as well. And by far, the most important mission that we see is issued by Derek with the reward of plantology training available. And you can see here in the rewards, it has 150 XP, but most importantly, planetology training available. This is one of the ways we can get access to a whole new skill tree. Upon accepting this contract, we can get a few different pop-ups saying that we've accepted it. And by going to the contract menu, by pressing J, we can view and manage our active contracts, which opens up to the journey where we can manage the main quest line, which we can see here where it's find the Fremen, and you have the different trials. You don't know how many trials exactly there are, but we can see that the first trial has been completed, which we have seen quite a bit of footage from, which is located within the Hagga Basin. You have to dodge a big eye, a few cutscenes, don't know too much about the lore. Now what's interesting is when they click on to the next book icon, it actually opens up a codex. So just like other codex, the more we explore and complete, the more we will actually unlock things, learn things, and complete a codex. That's kind of interesting. Didn't really know too much about that. Clicking on the pen reveals our currently tracked contracts, and we can see we've only got one currently available right now, where we can track it or untrack it and even cancel it. They talk to this NPC here, where they tell us this is the NPC we can talk to that will take us to Hagga Basin or Arrakeen, the 2 major cities for the various factions of Harkonnen and Atreides. So this NPC might be relatively important in helping us fly to and from those social hubs. Just a little thing we see here is that you can toggle on and off walk mode, giving a more cinematic, slow-paced walk, and it's used as we enter the base. Now, the base is interesting because it has a bookcase I don't think we've ever seen, as well as all the pretty much common stuff we've covered before. Storage, your power, your fabricators, refiners. So very basic setup within this first region. One of the things they highlight here is that they're able to quick deposit items into the various machines and chests. They also show depositing blood, and the blood is then turned into water and we can extract it to fill into our water containers, a litergen, which basically is just a measurement actually, I think from Fremen, equaling 1 liter. The next big part is they show us meeting Derek, who is the contract holder from when we were at the trade post. The guy who's going to give us the planetology training, opening up a completely new skill tree. So this NPC is important. It's located within Hagga Basin. So we'll be dealing with this very early. And to access this skill tree, we need to go to the Imperial Testing Station 2. So it's probably a good idea to pick up both those contracts that had the same location. We also get a pop-up saying claiming contract rewards, letting us know that rewards are automatically added into our backpack If our backpack is full, we can go into the contract menu found under the journey tab to claim the rewards after making space. So it seems like a super handy reward system where we don't have to travel back and forth to all the various locations. Should be an instant drop upon completing the contract, which should save a ton of time. So we will find many of these NPCs that will have skills available, that will be able to unlock certain skills, skill trees, and they mention they're hidden all around the map. One of the other cool things that they show is these random encounters or random generated events where we have some scavengers. They've got their sandbike damaged, which you can stumble across. So not everything is sort of set static. There are some random encounters, which is really cool to see. They proceed to cross over to the next part of the map. Main thing to take away here is that they're crossing in this big gap between the two regions. Thing they confirm is that the ships that we previously thought dropped Sardaukar, that's not correct. What happens? They only come out at night, and if you are caught in their light, they're going to drop Chome mercenaries will be dropped. So it's not actually the Sardaukar, it's Chome mercenaries. As they continue traveling on, we can see that they enter the Eastern Vermilius Gap, which is going to be most likely the next region we go to on our journey within Dune Awakening. We get a quick show of the boost on the sand bike. And one of the really cool things that we see is this beautiful sort of area, this vista. But most importantly, once they jump off the bike, they pull out by pressing 7, the vehicle backup tool, and they fire it at the vehicle. And then the vehicle is permanently stored within that device, meaning that we can have our vehicles captured so we can remove them basically from the map, have them on our person. And then when we need them, we can just throw them out using that vehicle backup tool. So that's phenomenal kind of functionality and really interesting to see. We do go on to abilities and techniques, and we get an example of changing them using Compel, which is a Bene Gesserit ability where you can basically call NPCs towards you. There's so many different abilities that we're going to have access to. Quite a lot of footage within this video of using the binoculars. Binoculars seem to reveal all icons or locations, points of interest, which will then attach an icon to them so we can see them very clearly on the map. So it looks like the binocular is going to be quite handy for identifying all the various areas and tracking them. And here we can see that they're looking at one of the camps, a scavenger camp to be precise. They go on to let us know that all the different scavenger factions have their own symbols, difficulty levels depending on where they are on the map. We get to see Compel in action. So you need to sort of get your cursor on the NPC and then fire it off. And then they're going to run towards you very willingly. And then you can sort of isolate them and take them down. Now, in this example, they have the shield on and they're using the melee weapons. And it doesn't look like they can really do too much to you when you have a shield on, especially because they don't have a shield. So resulting to the knife is going to be perfect in these sort of scenarios. We can note though that the power is drained as we take damage. So the shield's not infinite. We will have to be quite cautious as well. We get to see the Compel used the second time against more of a difficult enemy that has a machine gun and a shield. These enemies seem quite difficult to combat, but they give us a good example of dropping down the turret to sort of mess with them and do a lot of damage. So I'm not sure if this turret is going to be this powerful, but it seems to do a ton of damage, has good reusable range, and you can see the guy goes down. We get to see a bit of gunplay too, with the combination of using Compel. So we do come across one enemy with the shield and they're using some kind of SMG, which actually depleted the shield. So it looks like weapons, the dart guns are able to penetrate shields if we can dish out enough DPS. So that's kind of cool aspect, meaning that melee weapons and range weapons, depending on which weapon you have, is going to be able to manage shields. So we see a bunch of new resources as well, blade parts, armor parts, and gun parts. And we also see some of the loot that we get. So they pick up from this location, Solari, a Kyreb scout jacket, flower sand, and the fuel cell. The next important bit is the mining of a new resource node, which is the iron ore, which seems to be pretty plentiful within this area that they show. Then they move on to this giant base that they've built, and it looks incredible. It's got so many little details, lots and lots of decorations, and definitely has some cool little lighting and features, and some of these structures we've never seen before. As they walk around, they dump some fuel cells into the power generators, and they go up the ladder. Kind of glitches out a bit, actually. It's kind of funny. The key thing being, as he whips around, is that we see two different types of fabricators. So there might be multiple different levels. It also shows the medium storage container and the large water storage. cover is the ability to abandon a base. So previously they showed us first base. The second base is an advanced subfief. So we can abandon the base is just from using the map by the looks of it. And it says that the subfief console will be destroyed and all the base and its contents will be free for anyone to take. So make sure if you are moving bases, abandoning your base, that you get everything out of there that you don't want stolen or taken, because it looks like once it's abandoned, it's fair game. So after confirming, then the base will no longer appear on your map. So we don't know how many bases you could have, but in this instance, they've destroyed one. Moving on, we see them jumping into an ornithopter, and we get to cover quite a lot of ground in this next few scenes, getting excellent panning shots of the eastern Vermilius Gap. We get a flyover of a key location, which is an Imperial testing station. And they go through to say that there's different types of testing stations. Some are more about growing plants, some are more about geological stuff like mining and different ores. We very briefly see the flower sand, which is that white stuff where if you land, you'll be able to harvest it by hand or with a compactor, they say. They don't really go into what it's used for. As they continue on, we see what's going to be the chests that we're going to be looking for. These chests are hidden all around the map, and they're going to be holding rare schematics or unique schematics. And we can see one here, the Buoyant Reaper Make 2, which is used for harvesting some of the plants to extract water. We get Solari and a Sandbike power supply unit, Blood Extractor Make 2, and a fuel cell. Now I wonder how this will work with 40 to 60 other people possibly on a server in Hagga Basin. Do they respawn once a day, or how will that work? Or can all of us come and open this chest at the same time? We don't know for sure yet, but it's good to get some visual indication. These chests are going to be extremely important, and they're going to be found all over the map, giving us the best loot, which we assume would probably be region-based. The higher the region, the better loot, just like any kind of progression system. But cool to see that using exploration and flying around these beautiful areas, which they've somehow managed to make the desert incredibly inviting visually, that exploration is rewarded by finding all these chests all over the place. We get a good look at the Reaper Make 2. This is a unique Dew Reaper, which siphons a portion of the Holtzman field that powers a collection of dew to lighten the Dew Reaper itself. So it's sort of saying that it's using energy from both the battery and the shield, allowing for easier swings, lighter load, and more efficiency in the long run. It's going to take spice-infused iron dust. So that's very interesting, as well as the silicon block, an EMF generator. We know we get EMF generators from these scavenger sort of hidden caves where we have to cut open a microfabric door. It also indicates that this can be built at the general fabricator and the survival fabricator, hinting to the next tier. But it looks like we'll be running around searching for these various items, and there's going to be uniques that are going to be way more valuable and harder to get, or just much rarer, worth more. Spice infused iron dust, we have no idea how you'd actually collect that and get that. The Sandbike PSU Make 2, shown very briefly, it appears to be heavily damaged, indicated by that red bar. But it's interesting that we'll be able to find components for our vehicles in some of these special chests. What's cool is they hover over the flower sand just for a mere second. And I'll just read this out. So what is flower sand? Flower sand sits on the open sands predominantly in the Vermilius Gap, can be harvested by hand or with a compactor, can be refined into silicon blocks in a chemical refinery. So there you go. We'll be collecting flower sand to turn it into silicon blocks. They show us some other uniques which require a ton of new resources we've never seen before, including the cobalt paste, ray amplifiers, and spiced infused beryllium dust. And this is fabricated from the weapons factory. And this is for the K-28 Lasgun. It even mentions that the Lasgun making contact with a shield would cause a devastating effect. So they're covering the lore side of there. It says, mention all Lasguns important to Arrakis are now fitted with a safety mechanism that immediately shuts them off if they are targeting a Holtzman shield, including this unique. So you won't be able to fire your lasgun at a shield within Dune Awakening. So they've covered the bases of the lore there. Now the big thing to me is this unique Buggy mining laser. So that means that vehicle is called the Buggy, and you can actually attach a cutter array to it to mine different resources. How cool is that? So we'll be able to change it over, fit it, And then this laser is going to allow us to mine titanium and star iridium in mass. That's going to be a really cool feature, particularly for PvE solo players, having the ability to quickly gather resources using your buggy. You can see it's fabricated from the vehicle fabricator. The cutter array will require particle capacitors, steel, water, cobalt, ray amplifiers. Now, I don't know if we had any information on this before, but I don't think we really knew anything about how the buggies were going to work. So that's kind of a big reveal there. So a lot of insight into some of the uniques. They provide a bit of a showcase on using a probe, which we have to get quite high up, fire it, and that's going to reveal the map. It has a pretty awesome animation with these beams hitting the surface, probably bouncing back and reading and registering different information. And you get a survey report, and that's going to reveal all points of interest, I think, within the map as they show us the map being revealed, and at least all the key points of interest are revealed. Another sneaky bit is they hover over some of the icons on the map, and we actually get a very handy feature. So one of the resources we have to collect is intel. We use intel to advance our technology, our buildings, weapons, what we can access, our armor, everything is locked behind intel in the research tab. And they've very nicely made it super simple to tell if you've collected the intel. On the map, we can see all these red circles. Those are apparently drum sand, which will attract worms. So you do want to avoid those. They also hover over the Imperial Testing Station number 197. So I don't know if that means that there's 197. That would be crazy. And we are in a different territory called the Western Vermilius Gap. So this is different. We entered in the east, now we're in the west side of it. What's interesting about this map is there's a purple cave. In order to find out what that is, I went back through some of the old footage. We actually find out that this purple cave is a part of the main quest line. These purple caves on the map represent a trial, and we need to complete these trials as a part of the main quest. So that's kind of revealing. Mark it in your memory. This will be a location you'll have to go to. But it seems like just using the probe reveals it anyway, so it doesn't seem difficult to find. They do mention as well that the quicksand is the #1 killer of vehicles. So we've seen quicksand as an example in quite a bit of footage, and apparently it's not marked on the map. So you gotta be very careful. Some very cool aerobatics by the Ornithopter. We're able to do barrel rolls and have some very unique controls of being able to disengage the engine or the wings, and we can just hover. They cover a lot of different areas as they fly through, including these areas which are going to be very dangerous as they're covered in radiation. They indicate that we can enter these areas, but it's very dangerous. Another shot is again of the really amazing animation of the spice exploding. It causes a huge shockwave, which can be felt or seen for forever by the looks of it. And the animations are spectacular. Things blow up and parts and everything go everywhere. So they've really nailed that. It looks spectacular within the environment. Now, I know they've changed the color of spice, but that's just to make it more visible and a bit more colorful. The original spice is a blue, purple, or reddish sort of brown color, depending on the environment. Apparently, it has a cinnamon-like taste and smell. But we have to admire the flying within this game. It looks incredible. Having an ornithopter and flying around looks like so much fun. And you get around very quickly. So it doesn't look like it's going to take a lot of time to get around, but the map is absolutely huge. As they continue on, we see some what appears to be Harkonen structures, only for a little moment. And the reason we know they're most likely Harkonnen is from some of the trailers. We have the vehicles passing under these sort of black buildings that we can see now. We can only see them in the right-hand corner but just for a moment, they are there. So that might be a Harkonnen base or some kind. They get a bit closer and we can see that it is going to be in the next region, which I'm just going to call Jabal. So we've seen 4 different regions at this stage. They're entering Jabal. We actually get a demonstration of the Ornithopter using a boost. Seems to speed it up dramatically. And I'm guessing the other button is going to be the scanner, judged by the radar looking thing. But this flying around in the Ornithopter, it gives a sense of the sheer scale is massive. Now we're entering the Hagga Rift. So this is a very interesting location with these interweaving huge canyon. It's very, very deep and it looks like an absolute maze. And it goes on for a long time when they're looking around. So this is a very interesting region that they cover. They also show us the scanner. So you can even scan from all the way up here. It's hard to see, but you can actually see a ton of different resources and everything be marked. So that is very interesting. It's going to be super helpful to locate things. So you might want to get in the Ornithopter and scout around, use the scanner, find the resources. then come back and they dive into the Hagga Rift, and it is very, very dark, just as you would imagine. There are some lights around, but it is a really, really atmospherical area. It looks fantastic. Ornithopter also has a light which is switched on, making it much easier to see around the cave. We see some very cool resource nodes that are very bright, sort of a pink. You don't know what those are, but they seem to be around the entry of this. They call them mining galleries. It's going to be a very interesting region. Important thing to note is that there is no worm in the Hagga Rift region. They jump to the map which has the wreck of Tisiphone, which is in another new region, Jabal Ifrit al-Shark. Another interesting thing that we haven't really picked up or noticed is that the changing temperature as you go into the different regions. On the top right there, we have a very good indicating of the time of day, the heat level. So it looks like we'll be able to monitor and have to manage the heat and radiation and obviously be mindful of the day and time. So a cool feature just in the top right there. It'll also indicate if the region is PvE or PvP. So it'll go from Canley Limited Warfare, which is PvE, and it'll change to War of Assassin. Every shipwreck within the game is going to be PvP except for the one in Hagga Basin. So that's important to note. Hagga Basin, you're free to go in there and not get jumped or attacked. The different shipwrecks are going to have different loot, different gear. So they're all going to be unique in terms of what you can get from them. There'll be different challenges as well. We don't know what that will really equate to. There's also going to be unique components, so resources that we'll need to collect from these areas. We will be able to buy all these materials as well from various vendors. You can actually just get stuff by purchasing it. You don't have to go to these areas, apparently. An interesting point is that these shipwrecks and the materials are mainly used for crafting weapons, whereas the Imperial testing station are mainly focused on materials for crafting vehicles. So those are the two big distinctions. They're not only that, but those are going to be some of the more focused reasons why you would. Now, what's really cool is in this shot, we see a buggy that is just parked there. And apparently they say we can actually take that buggy. So there's going to be vehicles around that are abandoned that we're going to be able to steal ourselves. So that's going to be a really interesting strategy to see how that will work. But it does look like this buggy is heavily damaged as smoke is coming out of the engine. So probably something you can't just jump in and drive. So I don't know how it will work. And as they continue, they actually show us how to exit the Hagga Basin and how to access the world map. Now we've covered the world map a lot in another video. So this is super interesting. For the first time, we actually get to see how it functionally works. How do we get from the Hagga Basin into the PvP zone? How do we get from Hagga Basin into the bigger social hubs? Well, this is all we have to do. Get in an ornithopter, travel to the boundary of Hagga Basin, and here we're going to have to wait in a queue depending on how many people are on. They say as soon as we craft an ornithopter, we can leave the Hagga Basin. So it doesn't look like there's any other requirements other than having an ornithopter. So it seems like you can't cross into these regions without an ornithopter, no other vehicles. And here we enter the overland map. So here we go. The overland map is the way in which players move between areas on Arrakis. Visually, it is a representation of the entire northern hemisphere of Arrakis. It is a multiplayer map where players can see other players moving around. So that's going to be really cool. We're going to be able to see this being very heavily populated and people are just going everywhere. As they continue on to the next bit, they say the movement on the overland map is going to cost fuel, and the amount of time you spend on the map is going to cost water. So you can't sit on this map forever. You will have to make your stops. And here we have it. So here is us on an ornithopter represented on the map and Hagga Basin. Then they open up to the greater northern hemispheres of Arrakis, where we can see the deep desert, Harkonen village or town, city, and Arrakeen. But on the left-hand side of the screen, it gives a description of all the areas. So it looks like we can open this map, click on these locations and kind of quick travel to them, which is a pretty neat feature. Another great factor about how they've designed this is that it means they're going to be able to easily add new regions, maps, and other things to Dune Awakening. So it's super smart how they've integrated all this. We get to watch the ornithopter travel from Hagga Basin into the Harkonen village. And what's cool is you can actually control the ornithopter with your mouse. You sort of click and it's going to move towards your mouse. So even that is pretty fun. And if you do run low on water, you can actually go to these water deposits with your ornithopter. That's going to refill your water. And same again for fuel. you'll be able to find little fuel areas. So that's kind of crazy. You have these elements on these maps, and then we show them going to Harko Village. They don't really show us anything in Harko Village that we haven't seen from the other videos where we cover the free cam of the benchmark. So nothing really new here. We actually see a lot more within the benchmark than what they show here. That actually concludes the gameplay from the live preview or demonstration. So we see a lot, there's a lot to digest there, but we've covered a vast majority of all the most important bits, just highlighting them. So we learned a lot. I was hoping this would be shorter, but it ended up being very long. But if anyone gets anything out of this, consider liking, subscribing. Cheers.